Right guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to fix some vertex color onto our geometry, which is obviously really useful for doing material blends in Unreal and things like that. So we're going to pack our red vertex color channel with a gradient that goes from bottom to top. Very common thing you'll sort of see. It can be used to tint materials and blend between materials and all kinds of cool stuff. So let's get started with that. I'm going to delete that quick shade node because I don't need it. And here we are, we're at our divide node where we were. So our mesh is ready, it's got normals, it's divided into triangles, we're ready to go, and we're looking at 100 polygons on the nose, which well, wasn't planned, but I like the nice round number. Anyway, so vertex color, what we want to do is map the red channel to be 0 at the bottom and 1 at the top. Okay, so there's a bunch of ways you can do this in Houdini. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the quickest way to do it. It does involve a little bit of code, but if you really do want to go down the Houdini rabbit hole and you're starting to think, yeah, this is for me, then you really can't avoid a little bit of code. But you don't have to be an expert coder. You don't need to be making, bank apps or anything like that, or designing huge complex databases. If you just keep a few key phrases in your head, they'll serve you well. So let's get started and take a look at how we can do this. So I'm going to put down this node called attribute wrangle. And if you've been working through this series of videos, you'll probably realize by now the ability to manipulate attributes, whether it's color or scale or rotation or normal, is kind of fundamental to working in Houdini. You have to be aware of these attributes and what they can do to help you, or what they can do to hinder you in many cases, and how to fix that. So stuff like this is often kept well hidden away from you in programs like Max and Maya, but Houdini's philosophy is just get on with it. We'll give you all these tools, you can go and hack whatever you want, and that really appeals to me. As a programmer myself, that's one of the things that I really like. So let's connect up this divide node. And what this wrangle is going to do, it's going to apply some little expressions here across every single point. So every single point we can see here, it's going to perform this operation almost like a for loop. It's going to take each point individually and apply the expression to it. Okay, so how can we use this to create our vertex color? Well, we need a couple of bits of information from the geometry. We need to know the bounds of it. We need to know the bounding box information. So I can store that in a vector variable called, say we'll call it bounds. And I want to fill this vector with the bounding box information. Now there's an existing function in the Houdini Vex API called rel point bbox. Okay, so relative point bounding box, and this will give us a value from 0 to 1 based on the bounding box. So wherever the point is relative to its bounding box, it'll give us a value between 0 and 1. Okay, so this function requires some arguments. So I'm going to open up some brackets. It needs to know from which geometry is it going to take the information. Well, we can use the shortcut to indicate input 0. And next it needs to know what reference is it going to use to be, what is it relative to. And the thing that it's going to be relative to is its position, the point's position. And we can reference the point's position using the shortcut @p. Remember, this function will run on every single point. Okay, so every single point we're interrogating its point position. Okay, and if we close those brackets and then put a semicolon to end that statement, what we've done now is we've added a variable called bounds that contains the relative point position of every single point. So we've got an X, Y, and Z bounding box position for every point. So now what we can do is we can map the red color. So we'll say @cd.r. So if you remember, CD is the color attribute that Houdini understands. Okay, and then we can just map that to the Y component of our bounds vector. So we can say bounds.y. Okay. So what we're doing there is we're saying take the red color information and make it whatever value it's got in this bounds. Now the reason we're getting this teal value here is because I didn't initialize the color variable. So let's do that now. So we can just say at CD equals 0 just to make it completely black. All right. So there you go. Now you can see we're getting a nice smooth gradient from black all the way to pure red at the top. Okay. It'd be nice to have a bit more control over that. Okay, so we can sort of tweak the value a little bit. So let's just see how we can expand upon this expression here. So we're going to continue to map the red channel, but this time we're going to use another function called channel ramp. So ch ramp. Okay. So ch ramp is going to create a ramp parameter for us to use, and we can map the color value based on the position of that ramp. Okay. So I'm going to give the name. I'm going to give the channel ramp a name. I'm going to call it call ramp. Okay. So notice that's in speech marks there, and the value I want to ramp is that bounds.y, because remember this is a vector, so we're using the x, y, z. We want the y component. Okay. Close that bracket. Semicolon to finish the statement. And then to populate our channel ramp fields, we just need to press this little button here. Okay. And there we go. It's generated this ramp called call ramp. And now we can manipulate our vertex color position. And we've got a little bit more control over how that blends. You know, we can really create harsh ramps or very, very smooth ramps. So that's a useful control to have. The final thing we need to do is we need to put this information into the red vertex color channel. At the moment we're looking at points, and points and vertices are different in Houdini. A point is just a single point. A vertice is a slightly different thing. So if we jump across to the geometry spreadsheet, we'll see the difference here. So currently we're looking at point information. All right. So we've got CD, the attribute CD, G and B there. So RGB color, and you can see here we've got a range of color values in the red channel that correspond to what we're seeing in the viewport. If we jump across to the next tab in vertices, you can see we've got a whole bunch of other attributes. So this is where our normal attribute is stored. Okay, for each of the points I've got a normal attribute, and also our UV coordinates are stored on the vertice. All right, so we need to promote this color value from points to vertices. Okay, and we could do that with an attribute promote. So if I tap promote, plug that in, and the original class is a point, and we want to promote it to vertex, and the original name was CD for color, and now you can see our color values have gone from the point and are now appearing in the vertex color channel here. So when we export this mesh as an FBX, or anything that can handle color information, it will have that red vertex color baked into it, which is super useful as discussed. So I'm going to jump back into my scene view, and there you can see we don't see any changes because all we've done is taken one bit of data and moved it from the points, and we've moved it onto the vertices. All right, awesome. So with that, I think you should have enough information to put the UV coordinates on the support post. In the next video, we'll look at how we can package all this up into a digital asset, and then we're sort of ready to start moving it into Unreal Engine. So thank you very much, and I'll see you then.